And let's, in this spirit, come together in our celebration of this month of love. Because February is all about love. In a few weeks' time, we'll have Valentine's Day, and school children will be heading off to school with a special card for their loved one or ones tucked away between the covers of their books. The florists, the candy companies, the greeting card companies, the vineyards are all going to be doing a booming business. The restaurants, the hotels, as people go out for a special night to celebrate love with their beloved. In the coming weeks, next week, the Sunday before Valentine's Day, we'll talk about love in relationships and how our relationships deepen our experience of God. We'll be talking about the yoga of love later in the month, that is love as a spiritual practice. And I have to tell you that there's no quicker way that I know of, there's no quicker way to grow the soul, to experience the presence of God, than to just completely immerse yourself in that love. Hopefully that love that we felt in the guided meditation, the love that we still feel because it is with us in our heart, our love, the surest way to God. But today we want to embark on a fool's errand. We want to attempt to do that which is impossible to do. And that is to define love to some degree. See, songs are written about love, poems are written about love, movies are written about love, books are written about love. Everybody talks about love. But what is love? And I think if we're going to embark on a month together of discussing the different aspects of love, we need to have some workable definition of what we're talking about. See, love is a loaded word. Love is like God. When we use the word God, it means something different to everyone. When we use the word love, it means something different to everyone. So what is love? What is the love that we're talking about this month? And the title of today's talk is Love. It's not what you think. And I'm serious about that. It's not what you think. Because whatever you think love is, it is not. It's kind of like in the Hindu tradition, it's talking about God, the famous neti neti, not this, not that. Or in the Tao that you can name is not the real Tao. What we think love is not love. What we think love is our concept of love, an idea of love. And love is not an idea. Love is an experience. So to try to get to that which is ineffable, you know, when I talk about the mystical experience, we talk about one of the common things of the mystical experience is it is ineffable. There is something about the mystical experience that people know that they have, but yet they cannot describe. There is this complete sense of oneness, of beingness, of unity with the divine that goes beyond description. And yet that doesn't stop human beings from trying to describe it. And if you read the words of the saints, of the mystics, of the people who have tried to describe it, it sounds an awful lot like love. It sounds like the complete union that you experience with your beloved. The sense of timelessness, the sense of spacelessness, the sense of egolessness that we feel when we are in our beloved's arms. And for this reason, I think many of the mystical writings take on a flavor of eroticism, this feeling of complete oneness with the beloved. But just because something can't be described, it does not stop us as human beings from trying to describe it. We try to put it in words. We try to put it in a language that we can understand. And the best that I think that we can do is the arts, is poetry, is painting, is sculpture, music. Because there's something about the arts. There's something when we read Rumi's mystical poetry, there's something there for me that goes straight past the intellect and goes right to the heart and goes right to the experience of love. So love is not an intellectual exercise. Love is not a problem to be solved. Love is not a discipline like a science to be learned or to be mastered. But love is something that goes beyond all of those things. So perhaps the best we can do is to start by describing what love is not. And then maybe we can open ourselves up to a different experience of what love is. So in our world, and particularly I'm going to be speaking of our Western culture, the way that we in North America and Europe, the way that we think, as opposed to the Oriental traditions, the Buddhists and the Hindus who have a different philosophy and a different way of looking at life. But the one that we grew up in, the one that we were raised in, contains certain mental models, if you would like to call them that. Paradigms is what Joel Barker called them. Jung called them archetypes. We have certain orientations, certain ways of looking at things, certain ways of perceiving, certain ways of thinking about things that actually molds and limits our experience. When we look out at the world, we are not seeing the world as it is. We are seeing the world as we are. And as we are, as we have been conditioned by these mental models that we have absorbed from our culture, as we have grown up, as we have learned these things from our parents and from our friends and from our educators and from our clergy, we have a way of viewing the world, and we try to look at the world and understand it in terms of our mental model. We tend to absorb and notice the facts and the data that go along with our preconceived notion of the way the world is and the way the world works. And we tend to dismiss and ignore anything that doesn't agree with our mental model. So rumors that agree with the way I think are accepted as fact, and facts that disagree with the way that I think are dismissed as rumors. And we tend to go through life at really that shallow a level. And we miss what really is. And when we were studying Buddhism, when we were talking about the Buddhist way of thinking on our Skype class, one of the tenets of Buddhism is to just accept things as they are. And that confuses the dickens out of people, because people think that things are the way that they see them, and they are not the way that they see them. So the challenge underlying that very, very simple statement, just see things as they are, means you have to go beyond your paradigm. You have to go beyond your mental model. You have to release and let go of your preconceived notions of the way things are before you can see them as they are. So when it comes to this business of love, we have it built into our culture several obstacles to experiencing love. We have several problems, if you want to call them that, to truly understanding through the experience what love is, because of the mental models that impact our culture. And the first one we touched on briefly, and that is if you will, our worship of the intellect, is the best way I can put it. We simply just absolutely, positively love smart people. We love being smart. We love knowing things that no one else knows. We watch Jeopardy at night to see whose head is full of more useless facts than another. And the one who knows the most useless facts, well, by God, they get the biggest prize. And in our society, we give academic awards to people and different degrees and different titles to people. And the worth of a person seems to be dependent upon how many letters follow their name, PhD, etc. And you can see this. I remember going back to school a couple years ago when I went back, and one of the teachers was so proud of the fact that she had completed her PhD, and I don't blame her. I know that that's a lot of work, but she insisted upon everyone calling her doctor. And in that academic environment, perhaps that was, but to me it is also indicative of our society's obsession, if you will, with the intellect. We think that if we can know it, we ought to be able to know everything, and we think that we can know it, and the smartest people will know everything, and we try to pretend as if we actually do know everything. And this is a very subtle conflict, because I'll give you an example of how silly this is. Back around the time of Isaac Newton, when they were discovering the aspects of light, and they realized that you could shine light through a prism and you could make a rainbow. This became sacrilegious. See, this became a huge problem for people, because up until that point in time, the rainbow in the heavens was a miracle of God. God placed the rainbow in the sky as a sign of his promise that he would never destroy the earth by flood again. Now, I don't know why we're so thrilled about the fact that, we're just going to die by fire instead of flood, but nevertheless, that was the idea, that this rainbow was a sign, it was a miracle from God. And now science, through discovering the prism and the qualities of a prism, had come up with an understanding, with an explanation of the miracle. And my goodness, it was terrible. It was terrible, the struggle that people had trying to get their mind around the fact. And it's built on this premise in our society that pretty much God is something that we can't understand, and therefore anything that we can understand is not God. A miracle is something that goes beyond explanation. So once you can explain it, it's no longer a miracle. That means God doesn't exist. That means God didn't put the rainbow in the sky. It was just raindrops, light refracting raindrops is all that it was. And this idea that if the intellect can understand it, the intellect needs to be able to understand it. And if the intellect can understand it, it is not spiritual, is a very obstacle to understanding, to experiencing God. Because if we believe that the only thing that God is something we can't understand, then we have excluded ourselves from all of that part of creation that we can understand. And in fact, God needs to be all of it, and God needs to be none of it, all at the same time. All right, I told you in the Greek philosophy, something either is or it isn't, but it can't be both and it can't be neither. And yet in the Indian philosophy, it can be all four of those things. And when we get into the world of quantum physics, we find out that everything is more like Indian philosophy than it is like Greek philosophy. So we have built up this construct, this paradigm in our society that worships the intellect's ability to understand. And what we have tried to do with love is we have tried to make love something that we can understand, and love defies the intellect. Love doesn't make any sense whatsoever. When Cupid draws back the bow and it strikes a person's heart, he or she will do things that make absolutely no sense. Some people become insanely jealous and outraged and angry, and wars are fought because of this reaction to love. Other people become, who were previously hostile, become domesticated, if you will. They become peaceful, and wars are ended. King Edward gave up his throne, the throne of England, because he was in love. And love doesn't make any sense. So the first obstacle that we have in considering what love is we have to let go of our desire to understand it. You know, people will say, well, love is an attraction, it's an emotion, it's a feeling. Other people will say, well, love is just an illusion. Love is something that the mind tricks you into so that you will marry and you will have children and continue on the race. And everybody tries to come up with these definitions, and the first thing I invite you to consider in this month of love is stop trying to define it. It is not something to be defined. It is as ridiculous to try to define love as it is to try to define the taste of chocolate. There are no words. There are no words that you can use that will ever make another person who has not tasted a chocolate bar to understand what you're talking about. And there are no words that the intellect can develop to successfully communicate what love is. So love is not an intellectual exercise. It is not an idea. It is not a concept. It is something that goes beyond all of that. Something that permeates all of that. So don't try to define it. Try to be it. The second thing in our society that keeps us from truly experiencing love is this concept of busyness. Now, not only do we worship, the intellect and knowing, but we glorify busyness in our culture. You know, well, that person worked hard. They worked 80 hours a week. You know, they're very, very busy, and we try to celebrate busyness. We try to get better at what we do. We try to get more efficient. We try to get more effective. You know, the factories are always trying to figure out how to make more with less. We're always constantly trying to whittle that down to the point where it seems ridiculous, but to the point where the goal would be to do everything with nothing. And we carry that mental model over when we look at love, and we think that love might be something that you do. Love is an activity. Love is a behavior. And it's not. You can't do love. You can't even make love, because love already exists. You can only express it, you see. So that hasn't stopped the marketeers from coming up with all of these different ideas of how to make money by convincing us that in order to do love, we need to send a card. We need to buy a bouquet of flowers. We need to get some fine wine and a great meal. And a romantic evening dancing out on the town, and all of these things that we need to do. And yet you can't do love. Now, if you are love, if you are love, you may do some things like buy cards and flowers and candy. But doing those things by themselves is not love. It looks like love. They look the same from a distance, but they are not. So you cannot do love. You cannot think love. You cannot intellectually understand love, and you cannot do love. You cannot make it more effective. You cannot make it more efficient. You know, I get a kick out of watching the commercials on TV, and they have all of these things now where, you know, if you take these compatibility tests, if you sign up for their website and take the compatibility tests, they will streamline the process of falling in love, you know, because love is something you can do. Love is a test you can take, compatibility test. And of course it's not. I mean, if you look at love, and if you look at the people who are in love and truly in love, it makes no sense at all. You know, you have people of completely different religious backgrounds who are in love. You have people from completely different cultures who are in love. You have people who are completely different physical characteristics, short people and tall people and skinny people and not skinny people and all of this, and it makes no sense at all because it's not something that can be understood or something that can be done. Right? And if you look at our history, we have tried to do that. We have had princes of one country marry a princess of another country because it was something to be done to effect peace, to secure the family wealth, for the good of all concerned. But yet that's not love. That is going through the motions of love. Now, another thing in our society that keeps us from truly experiencing love is this idea that we must control things. Oh, by God, we love to be in control. You know, it's, to me, the image is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You know, the Titanic might be going down, but we're going to be in control of the situation. We're going to make it look neat while it's going down. And we like to believe that we're in control of things. You know, I laugh to myself. Google is out there experimenting with driving cars, and other countries are much further ahead of the United States. In Europe, they actually have convoys of trucks that are driven by computers. They have a human safety operator who sits there in case something goes wrong. But they actually have this fleet of trucks that drive themselves from place to place, and they're more efficient. They do better. And I think there's going to be a tremendous delay in our country before anything like that happens, because I can't see anyone wanting to give up the ability to be in control. You know, years ago when people were afraid of flying, more so than they are today, psychologists did a study, and what the great fear of flying was, it wasn't about flying, it was about lack of control. People were sealed back in this little metal tube, and they couldn't see what was up ahead. They couldn't see what was going on. They didn't know what the pilots were doing up there, and they felt completely helpless, completely out of control. And they had a great reluctance to surrender into that experience, to let the pilots do what they were trained to do, to let the airplane fly the way the engineers had designed it to fly, to understand that even if they couldn't see out the cockpit window, that the plane was in fact going somewhere that was safe. And part of the response to that was that, you may recall this, in some of the planes, they actually put in little monitors, like little TV monitor screens, where you could see out the cockpit, you could see out the front of the plane, and that helped people to feel better. So it's this sense of being out of control. We don't like to be out of control. We want to be in control of the situations in our society. Being out of control is a sign of weakness. You know, being out of control is just not acceptable. And watch what's going on. I mean, watch in our politics and watch in our public figures. And a lot of the scandal, a lot of the political backstabbing and all these things is all about being in control or not being in control. So our society values being in control more than it values not being in control. And love is not anything that can be controlled. Not at all can we control love. And I think that's why people are so terrified about it. That's why they call it falling in love, you know. It's a fine madness. If we're in love, you know, where is our heart going to take us? Are we going to give up this career that we've trained for? Are we going to give away all the family's wealth? Are we going to chuck it all and go move to Tahiti? Who knows, you see? But if we're to be truly in love, to truly experience the love of God in our hearts, to truly go where our heart is calling us to go, we have to give up this idea that we can be in control of it. So our need to be in control can be an obstacle to our experience of love. And the last thing in our culture, I'm sure there's more, but the last thing I want to talk about today is our desire to possess. You know, if you drive up and down the road, you see all of these self-storage places. I mean, there's tons of them everywhere you go. There's a self-storage place where people are going in there and they're paying hundreds of dollars a month to store possessions that they they never go and look at. Things that they have to possess, but they're not willing to let go of. You know, I think thousands of years from now, when the archaeologists of the future come and dig up the remains of our civilization, you're going to come to these self-storage places and think that they must have been some sort of temples where people came to worship possessions. And in our society, possessing is valued more than not possessing. Owning a home is better than renting a home. Buying a car is better than leasing a car. We have to own, we have to control, we have to possess. And if we approach love through the view, through the mindset, through the archetype, through the paradigm of possession, it just totally doesn't work. Love isn't something you can possess. Your beloved is not someone you can possess. In fact, if you try to possess, you drive love away, because love is the opposite of possession. Love is being possessed. Love is surrendering ourselves to being possessed by something that doesn't make sense, something that we can't do, something we can't control, and something that actually has more influence over us, possesses us, than we have over it. So if we are to bring ourselves to some working definition of what love is, so far the best we can do is we can say, well, it's not an intellectual experience. You can't define it. It's ineffable. It's not something that you can do. It's not something that you can control. And it's not something that you can own. Well, if that's what it's not, then what is it? What is love? And the love that I want to talk about this month, the love that I invite us to celebrate this month, and I can't help but kind of give away the end of the month. The love that I invite you to compel you to God. That very love is an experience of oneness, is an experience of unity. It is an experience of togetherness that goes beyond understanding, goes beyond action, goes beyond control, goes beyond possession, and it is just there. See, those people in our lives that we profess to love are the people that we feel one with, whether they be our family, our friends, our countrymen, the people we go to church with, the people in our political party. We have something in common. We feel one with them. Our pets, we feel one with our pets, and we love our pets. You know, we can pick up a complete stranger's child, an infant, and we can hold it in our arms, and we can feel love. So there's no sense of separation. The child certainly hasn't learned any yet. The child just simply is. And there's something in us that when we clasp that babe, there's something in us that transcends the ideas of differences, of separation, and allows us to feel the love that is already there. So love then, as we will define it this month, as we will go forward this month, is love is the very experience of oneness. not an idea of oneness, the experience of oneness. And the thing that keeps us from experiencing that is the ego. For the ego is where we hold our collection of ideas about who and what we are. It is where the idea that knowing is more important than being, and that doing is more important than being, and controlling and possessing is more important than surrendering. And it is the ego itself that will resist love because it is threatened by these ideas of surrender. But love is an experience of oneness to which we can only surrender. We can only immerse ourselves into it. We can only throw ourselves into it. We can only give up our sense of otherness to it. We are told that when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, that they got right up to the border of the land of milk and honey. And milk and honey meant prosperity and harmony, riches and peace. They got right to the edge. They sent in their spies to scout out the area. They knew it was there, and they knew that they could enter, but they were afraid. They had ideas of otherness. They had ideas of separation. And we are told that they had to wander in the desert for another 40 years until the old generation, the old ideas died off. The people who felt that they didn't belong there had to die off. And the people who felt at one with the destiny of harmony, of prosperity, were able to accept it. So what we are being invited to do this month is to allow ourselves the fine madness of love. Give up any ideas of what love is that we may have had. Give up any idea that there's something that we have to do in order to do love. Give up any ideas that somehow we can control love, or somehow we can possess love, or possess our beloved, and give up all of that intellectual construct, that paradigm, that mental model. Get your head out of the game and let your heart surrender to love. See, there's a part of us that knows already that we are one. There's a part of us that desires to re-experience the oneness. That is the desire that God has placed into our hearts so that we would come back home. I'd like to read a little poem from Rumi. Or actually, it's Coleman Barks' explanation of some Rumi's poems on separation. We know separation so well because we've tasted the union. The reed flute makes music because it has already experienced changing mud and rain and light into sugarcane. Longing becomes more poignant if in the distance you can't tell whether your friend is going away or coming back. The pushing away pulls you in. And I'd like to close with this reading from Rumi's poem. And the title of the poem is Each Note. And I invite you to remember that this love that has been placed in our hearts is a love that is calling us to experience the oneness, to experience the uniqueness that we are within God, but to recognize that we are a song that God is singing. We are a gift that God is giving. And the way to experience it more fully is to surrender to love. Each note, and this is Coleman Barks' translation, advice doesn't help lovers. They're not the kind of mountain stream that you can build a dam across. An intellectual doesn't know what the drunk is feeling. Don't try to figure out what those lost inside love will do next. Someone in charge would give up all his power if he caught one whiff of the wine musk from the room where the lovers are doing who knows what. One of them tries to dig a hole through a mountain, or flees from academic honors, or laughs at famous mustaches. Life freezes if it doesn't get a taste of this almond cake. The stars come up spinning every night, bewildered in love. They'd grow tired with that revolving if they weren't. They'd say, how long do we have to do this? God picks up the reed flute world and blows. Each note is a need coming through one of us, a passion, a longing pain. Remember the lips where the wind breath originated, and let your note be clear. Don't try to end it. Be your note. I'll show you how. It's enough. Go up on the roof at night. In this city of the soul, let everyone climb on their roofs and sing their notes. Sing loud. I invite you this month, surrender to the love that is already there. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to do it. Don't try to control it. Don't try to possess it. But be it. For that is the reason that we are here. And so it is.